potential severe weather outbreak and tornado outbreak for Thursday. But first, we're going to go ahead and look at the precursor event for Wednesday, tomorrow, the 20. Let's see if it skips a day this week. For the first of March. 1st of March for tomorrow, Wednesday, the 1st. We're going to go ahead and look at the composite radar reflectivity. So this is what the radar could potentially look like for tomorrow. This is the HRRR forecast model. And one of the things to note is that, if that's the right one, we have some activity. We have a boundary that's draped across right through here across parts of northeast Texas, parts of central Arkansas, and parts of northern Mississippi and southwestern Tennessee. Now, as we have this boundary in place, what we usually look for is supercells or thunderstorm activity that ride that boundary. At first, these will be elevated, meaning not surface-based. And once these become surface-based, if they can attach to that boundary, we will have some potential very significantly large hail and the potential for a couple of tornadoes tomorrow. I'm going to be staging down in Texarkana, leaving at about 4 a.m. in the morning. And so one of the things to note here is that wherever that boundary sets up at will be key because you want to be south of that boundary tomorrow if you're chasing. And one of the things to note is that the HRRR forecast model hones in on that pretty good with a pretty robust supercell. This particular model run is showing a robust supercell over the Texarkana area at about 1, 2 o'clock tomorrow. And then what happens is we have some more upscale growth to the south, and these most likely will be severe as well. But I've been keeping my eye on this potential long-lived supercell coming out of northeast Texas. I'm keeping my eye on that because model trends have been very consistent with that. That's still yet that can change between now and tomorrow, but I'm keeping an eye on that. And then basically what we're going to be seeing tomorrow, late afternoon, early evening, is that we will see a cluster or bowing segments of severe thunderstorms going across south central Arkansas, south of the Little Rock, Arkansas area, and a little bit to the south of Memphis area as well. And I do think that this activity will become more of a straight line wind event with some embedded rotation potentially, and move in just either to the north or right over the Greenville, Mississippi area tomorrow night. Between 6 and 9 o'clock tomorrow, I do think that once it gets south of Little Rock and to the west and to the east of Camden, Arkansas, I do believe it's going to become more of a straight line wind event with some embedded potential rotations within that actual complex as it moves through. One of the other things we're going to go ahead and go over here is the dew point profiles for tomorrow, pretty substantial. And basically, this is a tool you can use if you're not familiar with it, if you're going to be chasing. You can look for this sharp gradient right here, and the front is going to wobble a little bit back and forth, but it's not going to move too much. With that being said, we're going to have a very decent amount of moisture just to the south of that front, and that's going to feed in and potentially become surface-based. And when we have these supercells become surface-based and attach themselves to these boundaries, it's very very it's a very bad scenario. When you have that happen, it's just not a good scenario, and you're talking about some potential for some very, very decent hail tomorrow and some potential for some tornadoes as well. From Texarkana, south of Little Rock, over to Osceola, Arkansas, south of Memphis, down to Greenville, Mississippi, um, and Keogh, Arkansas as well. So And then as we go with time, so now we're going to go ahead and transition into Thursday. Thursday is looking like a potential prolific severe weather outbreak right now, with the potential that we could see a tornado outbreak as well, given the dynamics that we have in place. Now, one thing to note is that we have a dry line out here to the west of the DFW area. And what's happening here is we have northerly advection with nice pooling coming along that dry line. Very, very sharp dry line where we have dew point profiles near 70, and across we have dew points in the 30s, low 20s. And that's very significant. And what you want to look for is basically you want to try to look for these bulges. We call this as a triple point bulge, where we have moisture basically coming up and around the dry line, and we have veering with winds. And when that occurs, we usually have substantial supercells start to develop and mature in that general area. And when you get that, they're very, very prolific hail producers and potential for strong tornadoes as well in that bulge, that dry line bulge. And with that being said, now there's a few discrepancies with the forecasting models right now. The NAM forecast model wants to readjust the storm initiation a little bit to the west and then move it east-northeast to northeast throughout the day Thursday. Now, with that being said, if that verifies, that just means that the dry line would be accelerating. We would have a better forcing mechanism, better forcing on that dry line to accelerate it to the east a bit quicker. That's why that development would be sooner. If we get the development sooner, it's going to be in some better heating if we do get that development starting a little bit sooner. So that just adds fuel to the fire, so to speak, with that. Now, one of the other things to notate here is that we have very abundant, very good dew point profiles, about 70 dew points, very solid shield of 70 dew points in this general area. One of the things we're going to go ahead and look at here, this is the surface-based Cape per kilojoules, and this is basically the instability, and it's a lot of fuel for these supercells to work with. It looks very, very good. Now this is for this. If we're going to look at Wednesday right now, so this is the surface-based Cape for Wednesday, and as you can see, basically that boundary draped across is just kind of right around this area, according to this forecast model. They have some very good surface-based Cape values between 2,800, almost 3,000 Cape values in this general area, which is very sufficient enough. And you don't even need that high of Cape values generally. So with that being said, now we're going to fast forward to the Cape values, surface-based Cape values for Thursday. Thursday's surface-based Cape values are looking incredible right now. We're seeing a lot of very high surface-based Cape values, and there's a few instances of different pockets of Cape values. There's a few areas of concern right now that I have with this forecast, and what we're seeing is energy displacement, and that is usually what we see in these dynamic systems. And I do think that, for one, the early onset during the day on Thursday, we're going to have a couple of different areas to watch. Southeastern Oklahoma, we're going to need to watch very carefully. Northeast Texas, where my cursor is right now, storms are going to fire up in parts of Northeast Texas and parts of Central Texas and go off to the east northeast to northeast into Oklahoma. As that happens, they're going to be fully matured before they get into Oklahoma. There's potentially going to be a boundary in place across, generally from Fort Smith, Arkansas, down to parts of northeast Texas and just this general area right through here. That area is a secondary area of concern because if we can get these already matured supercells to develop in this area of Texas right through here, they attach themselves to that, we'll be looking at a double trouble like I like to call it, a scenario. So, with that being said, there is a substantial severe weather threat for during the day on Thursday. We're going to go ahead and continue on. This is 18C with that energy displacement. Then we're going to go ahead and go on. And then what we're also looking at here is we're looking at a warm front is going to be situated about right through here. And we have another boundary. Another thing to note is that the early activity during the day on Wednesday, the day prior to Thursday, could easily set up some boundaries in the general area around southern Arkansas. We have to kind of see how that plays out and see if those boundaries are still in that area for Thursday. If so, any severe storms that could potentially become severe in that area can attach themselves to that boundary. Once again, you're looking at another problem because that adds fuel to the fire. When you get those supercells that are already matured attached to a boundary, they just explode, and it's like a conveyor belt for those supercells to work their magic and just ingest every bit of energy available. So we're looking at two areas of concern, parts of southeastern Oklahoma, boundary right through here, and then a boundary right through here, potentially from southern Arkansas. So keep that in mind. Surface-based Cape values are really good looking right now. Surface-based Cape values between 2,000 and 2,500 kilojoules, very, very sufficient values. Some are even a little higher than that. Um, and then when we go through Thursday evening into Friday night, Friday early morning, we're looking at this becoming a QLCS quasi-linear convective system as it congeals into a solid line with embedded rotations throughout that line. That will be the third potential wave of thunderstorm activity that will march across parts of northeast Texas, parts of extreme southeast Oklahoma, parts of southern Arkansas, central Arkansas, parts of Mississippi, parts of northern Louisiana, central Louisiana as well. And with that being said, that is the third threat. That is the third potential more widespread threat. That is not the discrete supercell mode threat. That's the quasi-linear convective mode threat. And I do believe that there'll be enough uh, instability and enough parameters, enough ingredients still in the atmosphere to promote this line to be a long-lived quasi-linear convective system as it pushes off to the east. And that is going to be your prolific damaging wind threat with QLCS type quick tornado spin-ups along that line and the kinks of it as it marches off to the east. One of the things we're going to go ahead and look at here is this is basically this forecast model product is supercell composite. And what this is it's saying, hey, we have enough ingredients in the atmosphere to support supercell activity, supercell thunderstorm maturity development. So this is for Wednesday. We're gonna backtrack to Wednesday now. We're looking at Wednesday's threat. So this is the supercell composite index for Wednesday. And like you can see here, you basically have that boundary that's kind of draped across right through here. And then with the thunderstorm activity, the supercellular activity forming a little bit to the north of that main ingredient. And that's actually good if you're a chaser, because what that means is that there's not going to be a lot of immediate upscale growth in thunderstorm activity. So when I say upscale growth is when we have a bunch of thunderstorms just develop at once, collapse down to the surface, sending out that gust of cool air, and then the thunderstorms around that by 5, 10, 50 miles can ingest that cooler air. It stabilizes the environment, and cuts that flow off on the inflow of most of those storms, and it kind of kills the environment out, so it kills the storm activity. So that's another thing to note for tomorrow, potentially, if this verifies, is that right through here, we're going to have a lot of those ingredients just to the south of where those thunderstorms develop. So it's going to be able to feed into that. But what happens is we go through Wednesday evening, is that those parameters start to adjust a bit to the north, and that's when we see it becoming more of a complex, congealed cluster of individual thunderstorms that are pushing off to the east towards the Greenville, Mississippi area, south of Osceola, Arkansas. One of the other things we're going to go and look at, we're going to fast forward now over to Thursday. So now we're looking at Thursday's setup. Um, so right through here, there's a couple different areas of energy displacement like we talked about. One of those being in extreme southeastern Oklahoma, parts of central Texas and northeast Texas. And supercell values are very, 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 very good in this general area. And they really start to ramp up as we get the low level jets start to kick in, and really good thermodynamics in place, very good kinematics, very good shear values, very good veering, very good shear profiles, about 80 to 90 knots, about 500, 300 millibars. Very sufficient parameters in place, both surface and atmospheric. And with that being said, right across this general area from Texarkana down to extreme southern Arkansas and parts of extreme southeastern Oklahoma, very good parameters are in place at about 21Z, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. And then what happens is it explodes because we have that low level jet kicking in. We have a northerly advection that's increasing substantially. The low is tightening, the low is strengthening. Right through here, it's becoming a very good occluded low, very good dynamic system, a lot of dynamic parts working with it. And at that point, we have the line developing. So we're going to go ahead and look at the tornado parameters. And significant tornado parameters. And significant tornado parameters, this is the set parameters potentially that they may potentially exist in a given area during thunderstorm development, supercell development. So with that being said, this is for tomorrow. Now this has it a bit too far south, but it has some decent parameters down in parts of Arkansas for Wednesday. So these are the significant tornado parameters for Wednesday. So some decent parameters down here in Arkansas for tomorrow. It's not going to be an outbreak by any means, but we could see a couple of tornadoes tomorrow and some very decent, very, very large hail for tomorrow. And if you notice that discrete supercell that forms in Texarkana actually seems to attach itself to that boundary. When we have that happen, it's no bueno. It goes off like crazy. So, with that being said, this individual instance right here is actually that same supercell, and those parameters are pretty decent. So now we're going to fast forward to Thursday, and really, really big numbers coming out for Thursday for tornado parameters. And that's a given the surface and atmospheric uh, parameters in place. Very significant potential tornado uh, parameters for Thursday into Friday, very early Friday morning. Um, this is a general idea. So this is basically saying, hey, the parameters are in place, the ingredients are in place. If we have a thunderstorm develop in this area, it's available. So that's basically what you're looking at here. So not everyone is going to see severe weather, but the majority of people have the opportunity of seeing some type of severe weather or storms during the day Thursday. With that being said, the tornado parameters needed to support tornadic supercells are in place. So with that being said, just to have a way to receive warning if you're in that area. One of the other things to look at here is the helicity swaths, and this is the rotating updrafts. So this is the model product that says, hey, this storm is rotating, has a rotating updraft, potentially rotating updraft for this particular forecast model product. And this is what I'm talking about when for Wednesday. This is for Wednesday. We're looking at this for Wednesday now. And this is rather significant. Remember, I was talking about the boundary that was in place across parts of the area in Arkansas for Wednesday. Well, this supercell that I do think potentially will verify, I believe if it does attach itself to this boundary, we could see, some tornadoes tomorrow. So, and with that being said, that's why I'm heading out of Texarkana. Now, these this forecast model, it will change between now and then, but it's been very consistent the last 6 runs. That's 6 hours. 6, 7, 8 hours. So this has pinpointed a very significant helicity updraft marker starting across northeast Texas, going through a bit to the south of Texarkana, south north of Texarkana. It's going to adjust. And it's going to adjust with that boundary as well. But if it does attach itself to that boundary, you're looking at some very concerning things here. So with that being said, we also have a few more instances of some pretty significant rotating updraft signatures here across parts of south of Camden, Arkansas, and near El Dorado as well. Pine Bluff, Arkansas, as well in this general area. And that's different development from the potential discrete supercells that develop later. And then it turns into, this is for Wednesday night into Thursday, it turns into more of a cluster of storms that move towards the Greenville, Mississippi area, Keogh, Arkansas, south of Osceola, Arkansas area as we continue on. Now we're going to go ahead and change our focus to the helicity swath, rotating updrafts to Thursday. So we're going to change the product here. We're going to look at the rotating updrafts potentially for Thursday. And these supercells, the models will change between now and then, especially on placement. But I do think that they will either form just to the west of the DFW area or just over DFW area or just to the east of the DFW area. Just right along that, right around either west or just east of the DFW area. And with that being said, it's going to take a little bit for these to mature and whatnot as they do develop. And as it does progress off to the east northeast during the day on Thursday, you're looking at some pretty um, decent rotating updraft signatures here with these helicity markers. And the early development will go into parts of extreme southeast Oklahoma from northeast Arkansas. So these will make their way into southeast Oklahoma as we go through the day on Thursday. And they will already be matured by the time they go into southeast Oklahoma. So keep that in mind. Then we have our line complex, our quasi-linear convective system with now once this actually starts to develop, the line segment starts to develop, it will not be fully congealed at first. It will have individual supercells along it, whether that forms to the west of the DFW area or to the east of the DFW area. It's not going to matter really due to the fact that we have enough subtle forcing in place during that period of time because it's going to have a little bit of a delayed effect on the actual forcing. So we're going to actually have somewhat of a semi-discrete mode as that forms either to the west or to the east of the DFW area. We have to wait and see and take, I have to look at the atmospheric environment during the day Thursday evening, afternoon, and see if that is actually going to verify that's more of a nowcast situation. But right now, it's looking like this line will have the potential for some significant rotations within the line itself. So that's another thing to worry about as well. And I do think that the atmosphere out ahead of this line complex will remain untouched. I don't see a lot of upscale growth occurring out ahead of the line itself. So if we don't have a lot of development out ahead of the line Thursday evening and a very early Friday morning, then that means that that environment is untouched and it's very destabilized. So if that occurs, that's another more of a concerning scenario, so to speak, with that scenario itself. There's a couple of different things at play here with this forecast. And so now we're going to go ahead and look at the simulated forecast model. And first, we're going to go ahead and backtrack real quick. We're gonna go ahead and look at Wednesday first. Now, right through here is where you're going to have your boundary set up. We're going to go ahead and back up a little bit. So I do think that if we have a supercell develop, it will be in parts of Northeast Texas, and it will go along somewhere to the Texarkana area for tomorrow. And if it does attach itself to that boundary, we're looking at some significant problems most likely. And then what happens is we have some potential for some new development starting to form into a cluster at about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then into a cluster of uh, severe thunderstorms that move into the Greenville, Mississippi area, Keogh, Arkansas area. If you're not familiar with Keogh, I remember the smaller towns more often than I do the bigger towns. It's just, I don't know, it's just easier to remember. I go through more small towns than I do big towns. Um, so, and then, like I said, so now we're looking at Thursday. You remember when I was talking about the boundary in place? So this thunderstorm activity will be potentially leaving a boundary in place. Now watch what happens here. We have a boundary. If this verifies, it's going to be a rather significant scenario. We have a boundary right here. We have a boundary right through here. If that verifies, that's the worst case scenario you could be looking at. Um, if you like severe weather, well, there you go. That's great. If you don't, well, you don't want that. So there's a couple of different things happening here. So I do think very early Thursday morning, very early Thursday morning, we'll have some pre-storm activity. Most of these should be elevated, but a few probably may become severe. These will be hail producers, um, very large hail producers. And then as we go through Thursday afternoon, early evening, there's a couple of areas. One where we have that boundary set up. We have some super potential severe storms in this general area right through here. And then also, as you look back to the west and parts of central Texas, northeast Texas, we have thunderstorms developing right through here. Now, as that occurs, remember we have that boundary set up right through here. And this particular model run wants to paint a pretty nasty supercell right through here on that boundary in parts of south central Arkansas, south of Little Rock, and then we back it up with some very interesting development over here, just to the west northwest of the DFW area. And these look like very significant hail producers, potentially, probably most likely going to be tornadic as well as we go through 19Z Thursday. And then those will adjust off to east northeast about 45. Storm motion right now is looking at between 45 and 55 miles per hour. Um, and those will adjust off to the east, northeast, northeast. And then what happens is if we can remain, if we can keep this area right through here untouched, that environment will be very unstable. So then we start to have the QLCS, quasi-linear convective systems, start to develop to the west of the DFW area at that time. At first, it will be semi-discrete supercells. And what I mean by that is they're somewhat interacting with each other, but they're not fully discrete. So they're not completely harnessing all of the available parameters in place. So they're interacting with each other to a limit, so to speak. So with that, we'll continue on here, and then I do think that it will conform into a solid line either to the west of the DFW area or slightly to the east of the DFW area. And regardless if we have a discrete supercell over your area or not, this line will have the potential to have some decent tornado potential within it. And we're talking about these potential tornadoes being um, strong QLCS type tornadoes. You're also talking about rain wrap tornadoes as well within that line. Very hard to see. This line will also have some better forcing to it, and also that will allow for faster storm movement as well. So between 55 and 60, I would say somewhere in that general area for the line itself. Let's go ahead and see here. Now we're going to go ahead and look over here. This is the SPC Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow. I think there is the potential, it has the potential to go to enhanced risk, but right now it's kind of a 50-50 on that. Um, the tornado potential is a 5% tornado potential, wind 15%, hail, like I said, hail producers will be prominent tomorrow. Some pretty large hail. We're going to backtrack over here real quick and I'll show everyone the day 3 outlook. Now, this potential, I do think seeing a moderate risk issued does appear likely right now. I think there's even a very small chance, a very, very small chance, and I'm very conservative with my forecasting. There's a very small chance, most likely will not happen, but a very small chance we could see a high risk issue. That's a very, 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 very small chance. I want to really, you know, nail that into everyone's heads that it is a very small chance we could see that. It's not a 0% chance, but it's there. So it's a there is a chance of it happening. But regardless, I do think we will see a moderate risk issued for Thursday. There is a potential to see a enhanced risk issued for Wednesday, but right now I don't see that happening, but there may be some changes in the forecasting that would uptrend it a bit to where it would allow for that to happen. So, with that being said, thank you for tuning in to this live discussion regarding multiple days of chasing, live streaming, and potential tornadic outbreak on Thursday with potential for tornadoes, very large hail, damaging straight line winds for Wednesday, very, very, very large hail for Thursday, potential for strong tornadoes Thursday, and very, very strong damaging straight line winds for Thursday as well.